Звука нет. Dear ladies and gentlemen, there is an initiative called Watch Ukrainian and Create Your Future. Recently, we've had a presentation of that initiative in this room. Today, we'll not see a lot of movies, but you're going to be able to see people who are trying to create Ukrainian future. Those are young Ukrainian politicians who strive to prove that Ukrainian politics and Ukrainian politicians can and probably should or even must be different. And we are speaking about Euro-optimists. Today's meeting is the beginning of their great initiative, which I would rather call adventure. That's a journey, a tour in 10 cities of Ukraine, describing who a Euro-optimist is. It will be a number of regional meetings with so-called average Ukrainians, with public activists, to determine the gaps right in the field, to learn about expectations with regard to activities of people's deputies who call themselves Euro-optimists, and involvement of citizens in public and political lives. As I've already said, Euro-optimists are going, I almost said Euro-deputies, no, Euro-optimists. They're going to visit 10 cities during their journey, and they will name those cities themselves, especially for those of you who cannot see it on the banner. So they're not like hiding that, but they want to tell about it themselves. And they go there to promote optimism. Right before the meeting, a person who I really respect approached me, a public activist, and asked me, will there be optimism? And I told optimism was, is, and will be. And the issue is how we are going to develop that. We are not just dreaming, we are not just in love with our slogan, with our ideal, but optimism and optimization sound similar for a reason. And so when you optimize the society and find better ways for moving forward, you will reach somewhere. Euro-optimists want to prove that every person can find the way to fulfill themselves, to find people who treat the ideas about the future of the country in the same way, to inspire the society for public and political activism. And why do we need this optimistic tour in the cities of Ukraine? The thing is, the polls show that Ukrainian youth is not really interested in politics. You see, these bearded people are not really interested in politics. Only 13%, which is pretty symbolical, are interested in all Ukrainian politics, and those who believe it is important to be politically active are only 20%. Talking about distrust to political leaders, the rate is extremely high in Ukraine. 74% of Ukrainians do not trust present political leaders, while Euro-optimists remain optimists, and they believe that this not very positive trend can be changed. And me now, as a not very young but experienced person, can tell you it is not enough to trust, but we need to know. And the Euro-optimists will tell you why, in their belief, this society can be reformed, how they are going to do that, and how they need to be helped by the society. Those will also be the topics of discussion. People who we need are sometimes people who are known to the whole of the country, or the people who are not very well known. And I think that Euro-optimists are people with good reputation, and therefore they have all the reasons to be optimistic about both their future and their past, because optimistic future is built upon clean past. And before finally giving the floor to much more important people that your obedient servant, here is what each of you has got, unless you've used it some wrong way. This is a feedback form, and I'd like to ask you, and that's something of the request from Euro-optimists and those who help them. Please complete this form, and down below you will find, in the lobby, you will find the box where you can put it in, and we will study your feedback, and that will impact further activities of Euro-optimists. And for those who, after all the speeches that will be voiced here, those of you who will still be unsure and will not feel empowered to answer all those questions, we will have a Q&A session, and there are two important persons in this audience without whom we will not be able to do it, and one of them is Yarina and the other one is Katerina. They will have the microphones, and just raise your hand and you will be able to answer the question, and moreover get ask the question and moreover get the answer, after which you will be able to complete those forms. Of course, activity of any group of people, and especially interfaction union, causes a lot of attention. It draws a lot of attention from people who represent international organizations and European entities. We have these people with us, and I'd like to invite Mr. Hugh Mingarelli to the scene, as well as His Excellency Mr. Yanikonis, and Deputy Head of the Diplomatic Mission of Swiss Confederation to Ukraine. Now, each of you, I would like to ask you to tell within 5 minutes why, in your opinion, you as a diplomat and an experienced person and politician, and a person who's been for some time in Ukraine, please tell us why Europe needs Ukraine, and of course why Ukraine needs Europe.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Generally, when I meet an optimist, I have the feeling that I have in front of me somebody who is a bit naive, somebody who is optimist because he does not apprehend the complexity of life and the complexity of the society. And this is, yes, most often the feeling that I have when I see somebody who is optimist. Here in Ukraine, I have met people who are called Euro-optimists, whose optimism is based on a realistic assessment of the situation. And this is why, for me, they should change the name of their caucus. You should call them Euro-realist. You are realist because you know well your country, the strengths, the weaknesses. You know what the European Union is about. You know what the EU can bring to Ukraine. And you know as well the many obstacles that your country is facing to modernize. But you remain optimistic, and you are fully right to be optimistic. And for the following reason. First of all, you are living in a country which has exceptional assets. There is very few countries, even on the European continent, who have a highly skilled population, like it is the case in Ukraine, which have a long industrial tradition, a country which produces rockets, satellites, all kinds of highly developed technologies, a country which has the best agricultural land on the European continent, a country which has a fantastic touristic potential, beautiful seaside, fantastic mountains, a country which has everything. In addition to that, a big country, more than 40 million people, a fantastic size, at the center of the European continent. So de facto, this country has everything to be one of the most prosperous on the European continent, without any doubt. The second reason why, in my view, you are right to be optimistic is the fact that you have an exceptional civil society. I keep saying that, and I am absolutely convinced about that. I have been working with all neighboring countries of the European Union, and I don't know one single country which has such a vibrant civil society. With such a civil society, which is a watchdog for the political class, nothing bad can happen to your country. Even if tomorrow, at the next election, nasty people win the elections, or populist, or whatever, they will not be able to ruin your country, to damage what has been done over the last 4 years, because your civil society, I'm sure, will prevent them from implementing their negative agenda. Another reason why you should be optimistic is that in your political class, despite the many criticisms which are addressed to them, you have a lot, if not a majority of reformers. When I meet ministers, most of them are really honest people, well prepared, who want to modernize their country. Not all of them, not all of them, but most of them, without any doubt. When I go to the Verovna Rada, I know that a number of people in the Rada try to keep Ukraine as it has been between 1992 and 2014, but I see a lot of MPs, very often young MPs, who are well-trained, who understand the complexity of the situation, and who are determined to modernize the country along European standards. So this is another reason why, in my view, you should be optimistic. You have as well an exceptional political class, especially the so-called Euro-optimist. There is another reason why you should be optimist. You have the international community behind you. Most international organizations and countries are determined to do the necessary things to allow Ukraine become a modern and open society based on a social market economy. And since I represent the EU in this country, I can tell you that for the EU, Ukraine matters a lot. You are our biggest neighbor after Russia. you have a land border with 4 EU member states. Anything which happens in your country has an impact on the European Union. And therefore, for us, it is crucial that you succeed in your transition process. And for that, we have signed with you the most ambitious agreement that the EU has never signed with any partner country, the so-called association agreement. In this association agreement, we have a so-called deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, the main aim of which is to promote the gradual integration of the Ukrainian economy in the EU single market. And this is very important because the EU is a main trade bloc. We have the ability to export norms and standards a bit everywhere. And tomorrow, when you will have taken over our norms and standards, you will be part of the EU single market, and you will be able to trade and invest with the most prosperous region of the world without facing major obstacles. So as you can see, you have really many, many reasons to be optimistic, and your optimism is really based on a realistic assessment of the situation. You have a few problems as well. Huh? It's clear that you have to redouble your efforts to enforce the rule of law. You have to find a way to get a peaceful relation with your big neighbor, which has some difficulty to accept the decolonization of your country. And you have to better communicate because the image of your country abroad does not match at all the reality of this country. Not only abroad, by the way, even domestically, because you know that one of the main problems facing your country today is emigration. Ukraine is bleeding today because thousands of young Ukrainians, very often well-trained, are leaving the country because they are convinced that life cannot improve for them in the near future, for them and for their children. And we have to work on that to improve the image of Ukraine, to convince young Ukrainians that it is their interest to remain in this country because this country has all assets to become prosperous, safe, and stable. So, I think that you are right to be called Euro-optimist. It would be good as well to be called Euro-realist. But in both cases, you are right. And I can just tell you that on our side, in the EU, we stand by you and will do everything possible to ensure that these fantastic assets that you have in this fantastic country can finally be exploited for the benefit of the majority of the population and not just 15 oligarchs. Dziękuję.
Thank you very much. And if you say that we stand by you, then Euro-optimists, of course, stand by EU. That's a mutual process. І мені здається, що єврореаліст...
And it seems to me that Euro-realist Mr. Mingrelli, he believes, like he is actually realist, he believes that we need to double our efforts. And because some people say that we need to actually to triple or quadruple them, but at least we are thinking in the same direction. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And Marius Yanikonis, from the country which we believe we don't know enough, but this is a country which very often was a role model of the big fight and the victories even when the opponent was stronger, and success. So the ambassador of Lithuania. So why, let's say, how optimistic are you about Ukraine? Thank you very much. Good evening.
First of all, I think I would like to congratulate you with an optimistic start of the spring. Yeah, it's nice, it's white, lots of snow. But speaking more seriously, of course, I'm very happy to be invited to this event. It's a wonderful name, Euro Optimists, that we Europeans like very much, of course, and I think it's a very good idea to start a tour across the regions of Ukraine to meet people, to explain about, to talk to them about European values, about European future of Ukraine. And as my colleague Hugh said, it's always a choice and dilemma between being optimist and being realist. In early early years of 2000, Europe, just one example, Europe and the Western world were very optimistic about the cooperation with Russia. And they said to Lithuania that you Lithuanians are too pessimistic, you are too negative about it, but we were more realistic because we saw the nature of Russia, and we tried to keep more cautious line and not to rush for real strengthening of this cooperation. And later on, Russia made an aggression against Georgia, later Ukraine, Crimea, and so on and so on. So this is one maybe a bit different example, but this is also about optimism and realism. But on the other hand, there are other examples. For example, visa-free regime for Ukraine. So not many of us were optimistic on both sides in Ukraine, and also we Europeans, that Ukraine will be able to achieve that. But you did, and I think this is one of important reasons to be optimistic about the European choice of Ukraine and your way ahead. Of course, you already said about many elements why we should be optimistic about Ukraine. Of course, it's a huge potential of the country, huge potential of the economy, brilliant society, bright people. Also, you represent them. But what should be done to be even more optimistic about Ukraine? I think several elements are important. First of all, Euro integration. We would like that Ukraine would speed up all the necessary homework for integration in the European Union, and it's a very hard work, very boring work to pass the legislation, to strengthen institutions. It's often bureaucratic and time-consuming, but you have to do it. To change gradually standards of life, mentality of the society, and this is I think the main prerequisite for the successful European integration. Also, economy. The great optimism is that the macroeconomic situation in Ukraine is stabilizing, and also it's a fantastic achievement that the country, which is at war basically, you have lots of tourists. So last year the numbers are very impressive. Lots of tourists, lots of air passengers. So growth is really fantastic, and we can only praise you for that. But on the other hand, the economy should be open. Of course, Ukrainian producers should be protected, but the foreign investors have to be protected as well. And if you try to invent your own economic model, or are trying to close yourselves from the global processes, you run the risk to be isolated, and just lagging behind from the modern technologies and so on. We know that countries which are trying to invent their own economic models cannot be successful. And the third element, I think, it's education. Personally, I think that European Union should invest more into Ukrainian education. We see that you are making right steps in this direction, and there is a political will and will of your education minister to really create a new modern European education system. And education institutions should be reformed, and this is the way to achieve new quality of education, and it will help to prevent the youth from leaving the country also. So I think basically those are three elements that I wanted to stress in order for us to become even more optimistic about Ukraine, but I think you have plenty reasons to be optimistic about your future. Thank you.
Дякуємо. А знаєте, що мені от...
Thank you. And what makes me optimistic about today's event is the fact that it develops not according to the agenda. And we have people who want to speak after they've already heard and seen what was going on here. We have here the Ole Hartestad, the ambassador of the Kingdom of Norway. Good evening. I haven't got prepared, but I may speak to you very briefly. And sorry for not coming with a tie, but I thought it was going to be an informal evening and a very interesting evening. And let me now switch to English, because that's going to be easier for me.
I think that I travel a lot around in this country. I've been in most of the regions of Ukraine, and very often I meet students, youth in universities. And every time when I am there and talk about Norwegian-Ukrainian relations and our cooperation, I always come out with a very good feeling, because the youth are so engaged, they are so knowledgeable, they know so much, and they are so curious about everything that's happening. And they are very European in the thinking, and so are you. And that gives me an optimism when it comes to, and it's a very good idea to tour the country like you are planning to do, because it's out in the country where things are happening. And my feeling when I travel around is that really things are happening on the local level, on the regional level, and that's very positive. That gives me some optimism. As well, Norway, we are not a member of the European Union. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. But we are definitely a European country. Norvegia är Europa, також.
Norway is Europe as well.
And we have a lot in common. Ukraine is an aspiring member of the European Union at some point, and you are approaching the European Union through the association agreement. We are also have an agreement with the European Union, which gives us access to the internal market and a lot of cooperation with the European Union, which is extremely important for Norway. We have something we can share with you in this process through our relations with EU over the last 20, 30 years. We have a dialogue with Ukraine on that, and we feel really that there is a huge demand for sharing, for us to share our experience with you and to help you in the what we can, in the way we can, in approaching Europe and the European Union. So, підтримуємо євроінтеграцію.
So we support Euro integration of Ukraine. I think that's it. Then do we need to support Euro integration of Norway? I would say that among all countries of Europe that are not members of the EU, we are the most integrated one. Ukraine is so different, Europe is so different, thanks to His Excellency, and there is another unique country in Europe, the only one that is called a confederation, not a republic, not a kingdom, but the Swiss Confederation, deputy head of diplomatic mission of this amazing country in Ukraine. Please.
Dear Ukrainians, dear Euro-optimists, dear friends of Ukraine, it is an enormous pleasure for me to speak tonight at the launch of the Optimism Tour, and I extend to you the warmest regards of my ambassador, His Excellency Guillaume Scheurer, who can't be among us tonight due to another obligation, a dinner with high-level business representatives, which, as we know, is in itself a cause for optimism. In the last 4 years, Ukraine has undertaken considerably more reforms than in the previous 23 years since independence. This has been done on the backdrop of the illegal annexation of Crimea and an ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe, in Eastern Ukraine, which is putting additional strain on the country's economy, defense, and political and social resilience. Myself, I arrived in Ukraine 3.5 years ago. What I have witnessed is truly remarkable. The banking sector was reformed and restructured. The hryvnia has been stabilized. Ukraine reached macroeconomic stabilization. The economy is growing again. In order to minimize the space for corruption, e-procurement system was established. E-declarations for high government officials and parliamentarians were introduced, publicly accessible for everyone. A step, many would say not necessary, but it is certainly unthinkable of in Switzerland. Then anti-corruption institutions like the NABU and the SAPO were created. The government undertook a health reform based on the principle of money follows patient in order to eliminate inefficiency and corruption. An education reform and a pension reform were initiated. The decentralization reform continued in 2017. Decentralization brings more financial resources, but also more responsibilities to the local level. It increases service orientation and reduces the space for corruption. The Swiss Confederation knows that very well. In the framework of the judicial reform, the Supreme Court was reorganized and new judges were appointed. Finally, at the turn of the year, the Parliament passed a law on the privatization of state-owned enterprises. So, there is certainly a lot to be optimistic about. But being optimistic does not mean we have to be naive. Ukraine is not yet out of the woods. A lot of reforms have just begun and have to be pursued with determination. Other reforms have yet to be undertaken. The space for corruption needs to be further reduced and corruption impartially prosecuted and punished. The swift creation of a truly independent and effective high anti-corruption court, fully in line with the recommendations of the Venice Commission, is crucial. The anti-corruption institutions which have been created need to function really independently and complement each other. The privatization of state-owned enterprises and the creation of efficient management structures in those companies which remain under government control is crucial. Dear friends, we are already in the pre-election season. Despite the fact that the government seems united behind the overall reform agenda, there is a risk that the momentum for reforms slows down. But Ukraine can count on many important friends. As it should be among friends, they sometimes are frank and exercise tough love. International assistance depends on the continuation of the reforms. This, I believe, is important. As the 5th largest bilateral donor country, Switzerland is strongly engaged in Ukraine. Switzerland focuses on the promotion of good governments, in particular supporting decentralization, health, energy efficiency, and sustainable economic development. Switzerland, as a neutral country with a long-standing reputation as an honest broker, is also strongly engaged in peace promotion and peaceful conflict resolution, with a particular focus on the support of the Minsk process. But Switzerland is also the 9th biggest investor in Ukraine. We have heard it. Ukraine is a country of enormous economic potential. Its fertile soil, well-educated population, comparatively low salaries, and the neighborhood to the EU make Ukraine an ideal country for the relocation of production and services, research and development, and potentially Ukraine is a serious competitor of EU countries such as Poland. So again, plenty of reasons to be optimistic. But we are not totally there yet. Economic growth has kicked in, but it still remains fragile. Growth rates have to be substantially higher, around 5 to 7%, for the gap between those Eastern EU countries and Ukraine not to widen further in the coming years. The following conditions, in my view, have to be fulfilled for a prosperous, sustainable development. First, economic growth. To create stronger, sustainable economic growth through the attraction of foreign direct investment is important. This has to be done first and foremost through the strict respect for the rule of law and the creation of a level playing field for all economic actors. Second, building strong institutions. In order to reach this, the determined continuation of reforms, in particular of the prosecutorial and judicial system, as well as of the creation of independent, functioning anti-corruption institutions, including the High Anti-Corruption Court, are of the essence. Key challenge number 3, maintain peace and security and good relations with neighbors. This peaceful resolution of the conflict in eastern Ukraine, or at least a certain stabilization at low intensity, are essential for the country to evolve economically. Furthermore, I am convinced that the maintenance of stable relations with Ukraine's natural allies, its western and southern EU neighbors, must be in the interest of Ukraine. Ukraine is certainly more than halfway up the hill. But as the head of the World Bank program in Ukraine once said, we can help pushing, but the cyclist needs to keep pedaling himself. I am confident Ukrainians are a people with a strong spirit of innovation, initiative, and improvisation. They are ready to fight for their values and for a better future. On a daily basis, I am meeting so many skilled and highly competent people, be it in the government, civil society, or in the private sector. All of them move the country forward. Dear colleagues, Euro-optimists, you are all pedaling and we are helping pushing. Together we will make it. Thank you.
Дуже дякую. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Please take up your seats in the audience so that you see the people who will soon піднімуться на сцену. Насправді, після того, як згадано
Actually, after that bicyclist, and it was said that Ukrainians are innovative people, we also think that we keep reinventing bicycles of all sorts, and their excellencies were talking about different reasons for Euro-optimism, but I would like to share 5 reasons that I see just here. Anna Romanova, Alena Shkrum, please take your seats. People's deputies Leonid Yemets, Mustafa Nayem, and Alexei Ryabchin. Yes, Mr. Alexei don't think that you will be spared this. You are just as important as the rest. Dear colleagues, the general topic is why we need to be optimistic. The Ukrainian... Okay, and we could say that we should be together. Nevertheless, I would like to ask you this big question: why do we need to be Euro-optimists? And I'd like to give the floor to Alena Shkrum. Thank you, dear colleagues. You may clap your hands a bit later if you feel I think say something good. Well, I see a lot of people here who have come here in the snowy winter, who come here to listen to several furious deputies from several factions instead of sitting at home drinking coffee. So it seems to me that you are Euro-optimists. So why do you come here? What do you expect from us? Actually, the questions we keep hearing are the same. And today we're going to have a longer Q&A questions because we should probably speak less and listen to the youth and people who come with their agenda, with their ideas, and see the new Ukraine and maybe have some criticisms, I hope. And we always have two questions. Are you still those green and fresh and naive optimists after 3.5 years in Parliament? And my answer is yes, we still are. And the second question is, aren't you fed up with this dirty politics, and don't you want that you need to close this project and start doing something else? And I say no. I understand that the politics is not a dirty thing. It is made dirty by people who come into politics with dirty ideas. And that's the words of the Cardinal Lubomir Guzar, who said that if you let other people in, the politics will not be so dirty. You will see later some old pictures of ours, and we thought that maybe the name of the project could be different, so like some new concepts, new ideas, but that was the main idea.
And so why we start this tour today, where we will visit 10 cities of Ukraine, all around the Ukraine, like starting from Mariupol to Ternopil, from west to the east. That's because we believe that a lot of young people, professional, innovative and awesome, they are so disappointed with our country and being civic activists, and they are so disappointed with politics. The situation is worse than it was 3 or 4 years ago when we had Yanukovych in the country. And basically, there are a lot of questions like that we disagree. We are from different factions, and we never said that we have agreement on everything. But one thing that we stand together with, that's like that we are Euro-optimists. And second of all, that we need to engage young people as much as possible into politics, in public service, in civic society, and just being active. And only they can change the country. Only you and we together with you can change the country. And statistics actually is really sad. Mr. Kulikov said that only 13% of young people, that's from 14 to 35, yeah, this is 13% of them, they are interested in politics. And people aged from 14 to 35, so more than 60%, they don't go to elections, they don't want to vote. And the most terrible thing is that I understand why, and because I'm not an old person myself, and I understand because nothing has changed. That's their attitude. But if you want to rebuild our new country, so we need to take responsibility. It doesn't mean that you obligatory have to run, or it's enough just to come and vote. But there are many mechanisms, starting from business projects, local elections, civic activists, or just using different direct democracy tools to influence your authorities. So unfortunately today we have a situation that every year the number of young people who are interested in politics is decreasing, and the number of people who is ready to be in politics or in civic society is decreasing, and this trend is continuing. And probably that's where we don't work enough on. But why I'm still optimistic? Because there is very famous survey, probably I will publish it on Facebook, it's done by international company, which since 1990, they ask only one question. They ask Ukrainians all around the country, who do you believe, who is responsible for the quality of your life? And in 1990, almost 100% of people said the state. So the state is responsible and the state is to blame. But starting from the 90, every time, like with increase of 1%, 0.5%, so we had a lower number of people who said state and people who said, I am responsible. I take responsibility for the quality of life in my country. And in 2014, the number of people who said it's me, that was 30%. And 30%, that was enough for people to come to Maidan, for Yanukovych to run away, and for us to reload the system. But unfortunately, we didn't restart institutions, and this paternalistic approach that oligarchs are to blame, or old politicians are to blame, or people who live in Moscow, in Geneva, or Rostov, they are to blame. And I think that is a breaking point now, that we need to understand that we need to take responsibility, and it depends on us what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And if we can motivate at least 10 people in this room or in every room of our tour that they want to come to politics or start some projects, it will be great. And my colleagues will give you more details about this. So this 13% is an important proof that we need to increase the threshold of who is considered to be young. And maybe we need to go not up to 35, but at least go up to 40, or maybe 45. And of course, we heard a really bright example of optimism. And we can say in this room we have so many people because it's too cold outside. Or we can say that they came here despite the weather. It's different how you put the wording. So why is your political participation important? So that is actually the topic of his speech, why your participation matters. I will add a little bit realism and tragic things. So this Ukrainian parliament is ill. And we are not talking about that on Friday we have maximum 110 MPs. And they are only talking, but they cannot come to any decision because we need 226 people to vote for any decision. And I'm not even talking about that there is a spirit of corruption or some collusion is walking around the parliament, but I'm talking that in this parliament, I'm talking about the institution, the only institution in the country, and we have parliamentary presidential republic, so parliament is at the top, and that has to be the center of decision making. But unfortunately, the center of decision making, it can be anywhere. It can be in Bankova, Hrushevska Street, in some other country. For somebody, it's important to get some signals from Russia or any other country. And the situation actually is tragic, because without directions from the outside, Parliament cannot come to any decision. It's not even to give birth to draft laws, but I'm talking even about adopting the laws. Actually, it's not a problem to create draft laws, so because we have some talented deputies who can work on that, but to vote for them without outside pressure, it's hard and almost impossible. So we offer their. So the solution is to change how Parliament works. So we are fighting for open lists in parties, and with the help of our international partners, I hope we will be able to convince those decision-making centers that we need to change the system. And so what's going to happen after we have open party list, when we have the law on anti-corruption court, when actually it's not the fight corruption, but victory over corruption, then we'll have a lot of space for people who are free of long-lasting corrupted heritage, legacy, because like these so-called professionals, they've been living in corruption all their lives and they cannot even imagine how you can work without it. But yeah, we will have open party list, but then, of course, we need people to come and vote for those deputies who are in this open list, and then we need actually for people to come who are ready to take responsibility and to have fair competition in election process. So many deputies, they are not ready to participate in elections with open list because they have no idea how to win elections without bribing, paying, and any other legal ways. But somebody has to come, because we need people who can work with society, who can create draft laws, who can work with international partners on behalf of Ukrainians. And here we cannot survive without you, because it's not enough of us to have enough people like to cover all these areas that we open in Ukrainian society according to European standards. So you cannot teach the old dog a new trick. Yeah, we checked it. We saw it in judicial reform. Those who got used to dealing in corruption, even if you give them a high salary, they perceive it as bonus. So we need new people, new faces to come. Now we are creating an anti-corruption court, and the mechanism that we see that, of course, the right of veto, when the group of international experts, they will prevent those people who have any connection to corruption from this list to be there. But then we need to find those people who are totally clean, because the person has to be with perfect reputation so that we can make sure that corruption and administrative resources, like, they will not influence their decisions, only law. And here, like in Ukrainian society, so we need these new Ukrainians who are ready to live according to European laws. We cannot invite international experts in all directions. We need the healthy part of our society who will take responsibility for development and livelihood of our country. I see these people in this room. I see these people when I meet students at universities. I know that there are professional people who are able and willing. We just need to open this opportunity to them and to show them that the procedure of access to governance is going to be fair. And here I'm very optimistic, and I hope that in the nearest future we will see the implementation of this concept, because I feel that the law on anti-corruption court is going to be adopted in the nearest months, and the election reform is going to happen soon, and a lot of other directions which requires the healthy representatives of our community and society. Thank you. And from everything that Mr. Leonid said, so the decision-making process is actually, that's the place, yeah, that's in our head. And I hope that these decisions are for your optimists. So Anna Romanova, so why is it important to use positive image of Ukraine in the world, and to educate and to prepare women to aim at success? And I see a lot of young people here in the room, and I ask you, who of you believes that Ukraine has all the possibility to be a successful country? almost 80%. Okay, you're optimists, they don't believe it. So we will get optimism from you. I want to give you an example. So then Alexei Ryabchin will show you beautiful photos how it all started. Yeah, where we all were beautiful and optimistic. Imagine our first photo when we got organized. It was somewhere at the beginning of 2015, and there were about 24 of young people with good reputation who came to parliament for the first time, who have all the hope for the future, and they are ready to change this country. these photos we posted on the internet, and there were a lot of bad comments about these photos from young people who were saying, "Why are you smiling? Why are you so happy?" And I have to say that that was a few years ago, at the time when everybody was on this wave of good mood. We just came to parliament, and immediately this high level of distrust. And at that time I started thinking, and now I see this example every day. For example, КИІВ had successful Eurovision last year. All international media, they wrote, and all magazines, they wrote that the Eurovision was well organized, regardless of Russian intrusion, and it was the highest level of security, and negative content was only in Ukrainian media and in Ukrainian printed media. We've just heard speeches of ambassadors, and everybody said that Ukraine is developing, and every year we have more tourists who come to our country. It's true. And foreigners, they say that Ukraine is an interesting place to visit and to travel around. And I'm the person who is responsible for tourism in Parliament. I hear the most from Ukrainians. And what can you offer to foreigners in Ukraine? Like, do we have any interesting places to visit here?
And it happens all over again. So I think that now it is important in our changes, in our development, to create the trust, the confidence among Ukrainians, the confidence in changes in the country and in the success of Ukraine. And we try to create this confidence. Actually, there is a very well-known Polish sociologist, Peter Stopkan, who has proven that the countries that have become successful and developed faster, they had this trust not just between people, but also between state institutions. And he also stated that the trust must be based on individual actions. The more I do myself, the more I create for my society, for its development, the more I receive in exchange. Also, I start trusting people who also strive for changes. Very often, passive youth, they are people who simply don't believe in those young people who try to do something, because they keep asking themselves, why are they doing this? Maybe they want to get something for them personally. I think you've met such people, and okay, we've got decommunization, we've removed all the Lenin's memorials, but in our mentality, very often, even young people are still behind. They are still in the past. They don't believe in the possibility of change produced by individual participation. In the Soviet Union, there was such a phrase, initiative is punishable. And unfortunately, such a mindset is still dominating. We must understand that proactive approach and generally successful image of the country starts in the kindergarten, in the textbooks our children use. It starts with teachers who teach children using examples of either successful personality or saying that you should keep waiting something from the state, you should criticize it. What is the agenda of the current parliament? What is the content you see in our media? We keep hearing about pessimism. Look in the media. I know that a lot of proactive people have stopped watching TV because it's impossible to watch all that negative all those negative stories. So why do we need to do all these optimistic tours, and why do you need to be with us? To feel our optimism and to become one of us and change our country using this powerful tool. So yes, thank you. On 29th of March, Ternopil, 30th Lviv, 10th of April, Zaporizhia, 13th, Mariupol. If you think there is nothing interesting to see there, at least you will have Euro-optimists there. And when Euro-optimists move from Kherson to Mykolaiv, that's the 29th and 30th of April, they will see a big sign. You are welcomed by the city of shipbuilders, while if they went in a different way to Kherson from Mykolaiv, they would see the same sign, which is strange. And at the beginning of May, the Euro-optimists will visit Odessa. Now, Euro-optimist Mustafa Nayem telling us why we should support implementation of pro-European reforms. First of all, thank you. Yes, it's a bit of a surprise that I have to talk here today. It just was a random decision. We were unsure about who is going to speak. Well, I'm just being frank. So I would not like to speak about our history. I'd like to speak about three histories that happened to me. And the first is why I decided to go into the parliament. I recall the first day when I told my relatives about that. We were driving with my brother from Lviv to Kyiv, sitting near he was holding the wheel, and we had been presenting Lutsenko's book in Lviv, and I told him, really, you know, I want to go into parliament. And my brother started smoking really hard. He was silent, and then he said, well, okay. And that was it. And when we came to Kyiv in the evening, I saw my parents, and I told my mother and father that I was going to become a member of the parliament. And I must tell you that no one supported me in my family, and my father actually was disappointed, and he said, why? You're all right. You're a journalist. You're a respected person. You have been writing about all those people. And we were speaking Farsi, so my mother did not understand. And in half an hour she said, okay, let him do as he wants. It's his decision. And that was a real disappointment for me. And I didn't understand at the time how right I was. A second story, in a year and a half later, we were creating the patrol police in Kyiv. We've created that in Uzhhorod and in other places. I recall the faces of those people coming from the street, and that was very emotional for me. I was working on the national police in 6 cities. In 99% of people coming to us, they said only one thing, which was really weird. They said, we want to change something. Okay, they used different words. So they said, like, I want to do that because I don't like street fights. Yes, or I do that because of the Maidan. But the idea was the same. And my question was, why are you joining the caste of cops? Well, and those are people of 21 to 35 years of age. And every time they said that, I was thinking like, oh, come off it. But when we saw half year later these people work, we understood that they can really change a lot of things. Well, we know all now that despite all the problems, the patrol police is much better than what we used to have. And it's not just about new uniform and new management. It is just about getting special people in one place. And There was a case when head of the police, the head of one of the oblasts, he was a bit drunk, and some activists caught him, and there was a great dilemma in the police. What has to be done? Should we go outside and tell people about this case, or hide this case, cover this person, or fire the policeman? And the young people won and said, this person is not guilty, but we need to go out and tell what's happened. So actually, yes, this person was caught drunk. This person was well, was not fired, but of course was punished, and it was really a strange thing, because young people could not believe that the management their commanders would go and support them in this situation. And that was when I recalled that my father had not supported me in a similar situation. And the third story, when I was trying to hire a lawyer into my team, I got two persons coming to me. One was very experienced, and another is 21 years old, but very harsh and very optimistic, you know, very energetic. I gave them as an example a case, one criminal case, the same to both of them. One was very experienced, a lawyer in the court, and another is not very experienced but very active. So that was about Mr. Krysin. I gave them the criminal case and I asked their opinion. 2 days later, I met them, and the experienced lawyer told me, she asked me one question: who are we supporting? And I told, like, you know me. And she was like, situations may be different. You can do both ways. But the other person, who was 21 years old, that was a difficult case, but she never had that question. And I recalled once again my father and this girl. And I think that the optimism we are going to bring into the country is much more important now than 3 years before, because we were optimistic, because we had not known nothing. It was easy to be an optimist. It's much harder to be an optimist now, because you understand how complex is the system, how difficult it is to win, how difficult it is to persuade people, and how difficult it is to find other people who support you without knowing anything. So this is the most valuable thing that we have retained in these 3 years, and the courage lies in not having the experience, doing what you need to do right now, even though it may seem very hard. We keep doing that now. But I remember every step we had when we started with laws against oligarchs. Now I would not start that. But at the time, we were totally in for it, and it happened. I really want us to bring this belief, which is so valuable, much more valuable than our experience. And second thing is, while being in the system, overcoming all those barriers, we still remain optimists, and we value that in each other, even if sometimes we have some conflicts. So I'm thankful for coming today, because I hope that you may support us, and at some time later you will tell us you were like this, remain like this. Thank you. Oh yes, and Mustafa Naim at the very beginning mentioned Uzhhorod. Probably he was going to hint that in June your optimists will visit Uzhhorod and Chernivtsi, but, well, he didn't mention that. But Alexei Ryabchin was thoroughly prepared, and he has something to tell you and something to show. Yes, good evening. I'm Alexei Ryabchin, Euro optimist from Donetsk region. Just 2 minutes of speech and then video. I was punished for exceeding my time last time. So today I have a very difficult task. I will have this video. Yes, that was my punishment. The video which I cannot stop because they didn't give me the remote control. So I will have just tell you the history of creation of Euro Optimists. Please stop. I will tell you when to start. Every second is my second. Thank you so much. So, if you ask me who Euro Optimists are, well, every of the Euro Optimists can tell their own story, but let's unify the story that we've had, and we really thank Andriy Shevchenko, Svetlana Matvienko, Igor Kohut. Wait a bit, come on, I will tell you when. For help, so we thank them all for creating Euro Optimists as a union. So an attempt to create such a group was in the previous parliament, and Andriy Shevchenko, who is now an ambassador to Canada, is a historical memory for us. Let us start. And the first activities happened in summer. Mustafa told how he became a people's deputy, but the first joint action that we had was after the electoral conferences of political forces, BPP, Self-Help, and Batkivshchina. And the next day, we, as people after Maidan who had not had the intention to become people's deputies, we united and we held a joint briefing. The day before yesterday, I found the video of that briefing. It was the first one on the 15th of September. I had not known anyone except Alena Shkrum. Okay, I had seen them on the TV or read their blogs, but those people after Maidan, they joined the parliament. Some of them had not, but I hope they will soon.
It was very interesting briefing, and I couldn't watch it till the end. I was like, what the hell was I talking about? But this is our first approach and first common unified interest. And the next public event, that's when we agreed on the candidates on locally. Yes, so we have the block of Serhiy Lещенko, and then we together we presented that, okay, we have certain areas, election districts where different bad guys want to be elected. So let's have one candidate in these election districts, and Batkivshchina supported, and we felt the strength. So, and after elections on the 26th, we had the briefing that we did together. So, Народный Front, Batkivshchina, and block of Petro Poroshenko bloc, and we presented our initiative about coalition agreement, that we shouldn't have people there who voted for the laws on January 16th. And people who have values of Euromaidan, that coalition has to be transparent. And then it was the most interesting, and we tried to create this interfaction union. We had really good lecturers. We had a seminar, Maidan Impulse. And we were learning from really awesome lecturers, and they told us really interesting stories. The lectures were on different topics. We had also informal communication. We had really interesting lectures, which really which changed completely our outlook. And you see the number of Euro Optimists, future Euro Optimists, because there were some people, our colleagues, they just were at these events. Okay, sometimes lectures were not very interesting, and sometimes we really wanted to sleep. But we wanted to sleep because the most interesting was actually evening communication, when we played Mafia, communicated, and got to know each other. And informal communication, that's where we are playing Mafia. You can see the cards. And I think that that is the place where actually we had the initial idea of Interfaction Union, but we couldn't choose the name. That's why we could not create our organization. So we had a lot of options. And for about 3 months, we could not organize it legally because we could not select the name. We had too many options, a lot of options. So really a lot of ideas until Mr. Igor Kohut found this is historical photo. He was in Strasbourg, and Strasbourg supports Euro-Optimist, and it was like a lightning. Yes, we are going to be Euro-Optimist. We could be just like the Maidan Impulse, or okay, let's like Junta, yeah, and so let's call us in all different ways, but we chose Euro-Optimist, not because we are for European values, but so we were agreeing on the documents in Irpin, and this is the photo when we are signing the agreement, which the speaker then read from in Parliament about the interfaction group, Euro-Optimist. So you see everybody signing. Me, Ivanka Klimpush-Stensaz, Victoria Ptashnik. So we were selected the first co-coordinators. So this is like their day-to-day life of Euro-Optimists. We are voting for someone. We are like some people are leaving. So for a long time we created our rules of procedures. So it's a little bit slows us down, but I think it's very hard. I understand why it's so hard to change constitution, because when you agree once, then it's very hard to change. This is the briefing when we presented about that we were created, and then we blocked together. We took photos together. There are a lot of them. I'm sure that each of us has these photos together. We understand where we came from. We came from Maidan. And to sum up, I want to show this cover of magazine. It's from December. Can you please go back a little bit? Oh, okay, so you could actually do that. I could somehow control the process. So it was Новое время, New Time magazine, and they selected Euro-Optimist. So just like to start moving this routine or to drown into these marshes. And I believe that but I hope that we are going forward, but it's for you to decide where we were successful, where we are not successful, and what the next Euro-Optimist will have to do in the next convocation. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. And now Ms. Romanova, Shkrum, Leshchenko, not Leshchenko yet, Nayem and Yemets. Now you're going to be asked questions. Actually, we have not much time for that. Yeah, go back to stage, and can we get the light? Oh, we have another video. Oh, so you have more video. Okay, just introduce it. But still stay on stage, because you already know what is going to be in the video. Okay, thank you very much for waiting. So the most interactive part, because usually we don't have enough time for this part. So this is a video which most of us haven't seen yet. So we hope that you will give us feedback. But with this video, we wanted to deliver our messages to you and young people. And I hope that we managed to do that. I hope not to waste time. Let's start. And very quickly, because there are a lot of Euro-Optimists, and you can ask any questions right away.
Україна має стати справжньою європейською державою. Чесна влада, справедливі закони та дійсно комфортні умови для життя всіх людей. Саме такі цілі поставило перед собою міжфракційне об'єднання «Єврооптимісти». 25 депутатів з різних фракцій об'єдналися заради просування спільних ідей та цінностей зі спільним прагненням зламати стару систему та створити дійсно незалежну і розвинену країну.
Як і ви, ми розчарувалися в українських політиках і політиці. Але саме тому ми тут. Прийшов час подивитися на Україну як на наш спільний проект, розбудовуючи який кожен зможе себе реалізувати.
Наша стратегія – успішна Україна. І перш за все, ми маємо знищити корупцію. Держава має грати в шахи, а не в наперстки.
Наш обов'язок перед тими, хто пішов, і перед прийдешніми поколіннями добитися справедливості. Ми зламаємо систему безкарності убивств, литаїв і корупціонерів.
Серед нас є лідери, готові боротися з корупцією, вимагати справедливості. І не на словах, а реальними діями. Будувати ефективні правоохоронні органи, чесні суди та вільну економіку.
Час перейти від старої корумпованої системи до нового державного управління. Ми прагнемо перезавантажити країну та відкрити державну службу для професійних, чесних, талановитих людей.
Ми відповідальні за те, щоб молоді українці мріяли жити, працювати і народжувати в Україні, а не хотіли виїхати за кордон.
Ми відстоюємо права бізнесу перед державними органами, запроваджуємо правила чесної та прозорої конкуренції, створюємо сприятливі умови для ведення бізнесу в Україні.
Ми впроваджуємо нові технології, підтримуємо інноваційний розвиток економіки та розвиваємо зелену енергетику для протидії зміни клімату.
Енергобезпека – це тепло в ваших оселях, це чисте повітря в ваших містах. Ми створюємо нову енергію. Україна буде в тренді світових змін.
Ми хочемо, щоб Україна стала туристичною. Для того, щоб в нашій державі запрацювала надприбуткова індустрія гостинності, необхідно 3 речі. Це якісний туристичний продукт, це його промоція і третє, найголовніше – політична воля.
Ми, нове покоління українських політиків, не ховаємо своїх статків та готові відверто казати про їхнє походження.
Децентралізація – це передача не тільки проблем на місця, а й повноважень. Тому ми шукаємо справжніх лідерів, які зроблять Україну європейською державою.
Ми відстоюємо парламентський і цивільний контроль в секторі безпеки і оборони для того, щоб українська армія ставала сильнішою, а дипломатія – професійнішою.
Ми відстоюємо економічні та політичні інтереси нашої держави на міжнародному рівні.
Ми втримали країну, вибороли безвіз. Наше завдання сьогодні – запровадити гідні умови за стандартами НАТО та ЄС.
Ми побудували міжнародну коаліцію для боротьби з російською агресією. Наше завдання зараз – повернути Крим і Донбас.
Невпинно рухаючись уперед, ми повинні пам'ятати про безпеку руху та тих, хто в ньому обмежений. Найбільшою цінністю європейської України є людське життя.
Нашим дітям жити в цій країні. Ми маємо стати для них прикладом і зробити все, щоб вони пишалися Україною.
Наша молодь, нове покоління українців – це наша гордість. Вона мотивує нас відстоювати справедливість та будувати сильну країну.
Сотні людей віддали своє життя, повірили в майбутнє України. Сьогодні це майбутнє залежить від нас, від небайдужих українців і політиків нової якості.
За час існування об'єднання єврооптимісти ініціювали 239 законопроєктів та проєктів постанов. 43 з них набули чинності, ще 133 очікують розгляду. Шукаючи Європу, ми знайшли Україну.
Bravo. And we just like you're all stars and not extras here. And basically I start with I started with like that in this room. It was about like that we support Ukrainian. It's definitely Ukrainian future. So colleagues, organizers actually set the condition that we need to finish at 9:20. So Mustafa, you can take this chair. It's fine. So, questions? Okay. Vyacheslav Rudkov, then I see a lady in the fourth, but like, let's move quickly. And then I see a lady in the first row. So, hello, at first observation, do I understand you correctly that at the logos, do you have like only international donors, yeah, in the corner? So only international donors support Euro-Optimist. So my suggestion that take into account that Donetsk Oblast looks as it's not so convenient to move from Kramatorsk to Mariupol. So we would like to see you in Kramatorsk as a place where you are going to visit. And the question. Could you tell me, please, your interfaction caucus? Are you ready to become a faction? And from their attempts to be optimistic to actually start acting, and And in order to increase the number of people who trust optimists, how ready is your faction ready to make the next step? Alexei, I'm interested in your opinion as well. Are you ready to vote as a faction for the law which is voted for? You just pressing the button. So are you ready to adopt the law by breaking the rules? I will start. So none of us is never voting for our colleagues. We even had drones in the room to avoid this situation, and this is our principle. So we are not faction or political party. We are a union from representatives of different parties and like independent MPs, and we believe that that is the most efficient tool. I believe that we all have different ideas about faction, but in this parliament it's impossible. But I'm sure that many people who are on the stage are going to be in one party, and they will be sitting in different place. Yeah, we have two options: either to have an MP seat or to be in prison.
Very briefly about the towns or cities, we'd like to cover all the towns in Ukraine, but unfortunately we are somehow somewhat limited with programs that India and other donors help us do, and if it goes well and we see that people respond, we will continue, and we are willing to consider any other town. Talking about the party and the rest, I'm sure in 3 years I've seen that the uniqueness of this interfaction caucus is that we are in different parties, but we have the same values and we share the same goals, and it works really well. This is a unique thing, and for it we must thank all these people who are capable, while being in different factions, together strive for the same goals, even when they don't have a faction of their own, because these people are ambassadors of these ideas in their factions. So please, the lady in the fourth row, could you please? My name is Svetlana Lysenko, Portal Kadri. You were present in this tour of Euro Optimism. It looks like a preparation to election. How much does it cost? Who pays for this? You see, we're not hiding anything. It's all here. You see the donors. And no, it's not an electoral campaign. We planned it a year ago. There are still 18 months until the elections, and I'm sure that this parliament will be able to do something in this time, and there is one goal in this tour. We want to hear from the people, because so far people are listening mostly. Maybe when we announced the tour, and I'd like to speak about this word, tour, not campaign. Maybe political dinosaurs were so afraid that they started the gossips about the start of the electoral campaign, and maybe their preliminary idea they had about the elections this autumn, but we want to make a tour for people who share the vision about the future of the country, and we want to hear the people. Yes, moving to a tour, people usually take insurance. What's your insurance? Can I add to that? Well, I would not want, well, because I will speak my mind, really. What's the problem? Yes, we all want to get prepared to the elections. Moreover, we all here want to be in the power in this country. We don't want to say we don't need all those positions. We need those positions because we know what to do there. We are not afraid that someone is going to evaluate us, to judge us. And the most important thing, we are not creating a party. We are not hiding anything. Yes, we all the time, we keep preparing to elections. And I think the biggest achievement will be our fear of losing the elections, because that's the responsibility. The politicians must always feel they're guilty and try to prove they're better than they are. The first row, please. Thank you. I'll come a bit closer because I don't like to keep my back to the people. My name is Katerina. I represent the Sixth Power NGO, and we share some goals with you. So my question is, what are the objectives that you have? Because you started your presentation from the very beginning with the statistics about the youth, how they fulfill themselves in the social and political lives, how they attend elections, and so on. So how are you going to do what you want to do? Okay, I will speak briefly. All the ideas are done through power. You cannot do something without having authority, just posting something on Facebook. You need agents of influence inside the system, and to change the system you need new faces in the system. So we are basically, okay, I don't want to say we are pioneers, but we are like this humus, this fertilizer for the new generation, and we want everyone to take part in that. I think the most important thing is that we need to give the hope to this country that this nation will be fulfilled. It's a country where you can live and have children and have business, where you can fulfill yourself. It depends on us, every one of us, and we must be an example. We must show what we were before the parliament and what we did in the parliament. It's important every time to remind it and remember that your work that you do every day is important for this country. Now the priorities have changed after Maidan. The values have shifted, and it's important to unite people. Another question from the first row. No, you asked the question, that was the answer. And then from that part, please. My name is Sergei Rekhin, Ukrainian NGO. And what do you actually expect from civil society? How it can help you? Thank you for a very short and good question. Mustafa Nayem, you as people who understand more about politics, deliver the messages to the ordinary people. Second, look not just for negatives in the system, look for people who you trust and support them. For 25 years, we've been living in the paradigm of everything's bad and civil society is fighting it. You are the biggest partners we have. We don't have any other domestic partners, only you and people who trust you. Or they have some great ideas. We need your support and help. Very briefly, colleagues, what do we expect? We expect oversight over us, over the authorities, everything's happening in the state. We want criticism, we want constructive critics, and we are open to cooperation with any NGO. If it's tourism, go to Anya Romanova. If it's public service, that's to me. If that's energy sector, Vika and other people. If you want to deal with the new police reform something, go to Mustafa. We all have our own topics. And we must work with NGOs because we cannot do without them. And we want some support from you. Yes, that's true. Two more questions from that side. First one gentleman in the tie and then another one. My name is Maxim Glukhov. I'm from Kyiv. And I see the European gender quota, girls on the left, boys on the right, and my question is, you all are saying that you need the authority, you need power, you all represent different factions. Recently there was a big conference whether we are going to have a Euro-optimist as the next president of Ukraine. Think of it while they're asking another question. My name is Vasil Babic, and I would like to continue that. Please raise your hands, those who will be 35 or more in March 2019. Not bad. And are you going to have one among you? Will you choose one? And please raise your hands who saw the question on the Facebook. And Oksana doesn't confess, but she liked it on Facebook.
Насправді складні зараз відбуваються речі, і в контексті якраз цих виборів президента в державі. Я вам точно можу дати відповідь, що серед єврооптимістів будуть кандидати в президенти України.
Дякую. Дякую. Панове.
Things happening in Europe, optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic, cause a lot of interest, not just in Europe, but in the USA. And we will have the deputy head of the diplomatic mission of the USA to Ukraine, Mr. Kant. I thought that this discussion is more important than just opinions of the American embassy. So I think that we are going to have a conversation between Ukrainians and Euro-optimists. We are just going to be observers. So I think it's better just to hear from you, your opinions and your questions. As a parliamentarian, I would like to give more more time to the audience. So we are grateful for these 4 additional minutes during which we will be able to discuss one more question. So another question, and after that, Victoria Vatsitska and Sergei Lещенко as co-chairpersons will sum up our meeting. My name is Dmitro. You started saying that you need to engage the youth into politics. So my question is, what are you going to recommend the youth about the choice of the political force to support while going into politics? A great question. So it's very simple. Don't look at billboards much, because people who are fair in their intent, and let's be realistic, that's very difficult to earn money for that advertising. And second, be very critical about activities of different politicians in this parliament, analyzing who promised what and did what after that. And the third, hear the intentions of those people. Are they actually capable of doing what they promise? Because we've heard a lot of promise, and we've seen not a lot of specific things that they promise to do. Very briefly, my answer will be similar, and it goes about any correct answer to any question. Think. Don't listen to TV, don't watch beautiful videos or beautiful faces of the candidates. Open internet, analyze situation, analyze the deeds, analyze the words, analyze what they promise and what they do. And that's the only way to make selection. Yes, and listen to the radio. That's what I would like to add. Okay, yeah, listen to the radio, and Andrei Kulikov as well. So, we are going to the store to hear the people. We don't know the answers to all the questions that we have, and we want to see the differences in different regions, but I will go to look for people to help me build the green economy. People dealing with corruption will try to look for people fighting against corruption. People who deal with tourism will look for people who would help them. Okay, we are going to get ideas, to get supporters. It's not just an electoral campaign. Alena Shkrum, very briefly. What is cool about the youth, people below 35? They are very well educated. They don't watch TV, almost. They read books more. They are critical in their thinking, and whoever comes to you, any politician, any mayor, saying something, promising something, ask how he's going to do that. So we want to raise the pensions. How? Reduce the taxes. How? How are you going to get the budget? And since you are more experienced or more courageous than we are, maybe more optimistic than we are, ask question why and see whether these people are willing to change. Yes, and not just how he is going to do that, but how she is going to do that. That's a good question too. So, just one question, the last question. Yes, please. My name is Ivan. I'm 23, and I'm your typical young person. And before asking my question, I would like to say very briefly about optimism and realism. Recently, I've been at the social advertising festival when I saw a lot of talented young people. There were twice as more as people sitting in this audience, and they are investing their time and talent and funds, not just into Ukraine, but also in changes to people in this country. And very brief about realism, not all people are ready to fight. People want to accept the conditions that are comfortable for them and places where they can find this place. So my question is, why do these young talented Ukrainians who don't just want but already invest themselves into change, why do they need to be optimistic about you and what you can offer to them? Who's ready? Mustafa? I see his eyes, he's ready to speak. Well, first, because they have no choice. Look, we always struggle, we very often struggle, and it's very difficult to be an optimist. So the only way to be an optimist, there is only one way to be an optimist in Ukraine. Either we win and become the new generation in this country, or we will have other young politicians who will not be optimistic, they will be pragmatics, and when we are 50, we'll be telling of how we fought them. Now, I don't want people to be automatically optimistic about ourselves. I don't know what happens to us in 10 years. I've seen many people who have changed. And I want them to be just not optimistic, but want those people to believe in themselves. I want to become a tool for them, a person who can introduce their ideas and energy into politics. And when I'm done, I will just tell them, go do it now, do it yourself. I want to find those people who are capable of finding people who are ready to make changes. Capability is what we need.
Any of you, would you like to add? Yes, you ask, like, what is their motivation? One philosopher wrote, like, a metaphor that for any action, you have only 3 possible motivators, and if you unite 2 out of 3, one, like, you do it for power and money. Second motivation, that's sex or satisfaction of what you are doing. Or third, it's fighting for the fight for victory or their fight is a process. So if we connect at least 2 out of 3, it would be great. Okay, sorry, it's like all time for questions. But maybe if you want, you can follow your optimists and you can see how they're changing not only like after a few years, but like how they're changing during the tour, because they will be learning during this tour, and you will see a tourist site at least of 10 Ukrainian cities. Okay, Sergei Lещенко will sum up. Victoria will finish. So I will be very short, because I know that you all want to go home. When we got here, we had a dilemma, like, do we need to cancel this event or do we need to have it? And half a day we had a fight in Telegram and chats. Should we do it because of the weather and all other things? Yeah, because in the United States it's like the national, it's like their emergency, yeah, like, and like nobody works, but Ukraine works. We didn't cancel the event, and we want to thank you for coming. So at the end, we will give you the round of applause, and your round of applause will be for you. And today we have 3 optimistic news, and which turns me into optimist. First, that today we voted for anti-corruption court, and this another step to finish the anti-corruption vertical line in Ukraine. Second optimistic news is that Ukraine has 2.5 billion which in the court that we won in Stockholm from Gazprom. And it actually made me laugh, because it was a part of me, because I was the first to publish contracts between Naftogaz and Gazprom, and it was not so easy to find this contract, but we made it public in Ukrainska Pravda, and I will not open you the sources where I got those contracts. And the third optimistic piece of news is that $1 and $2 million, like Startup Rin, was bought by Amazon, and the headquarters of this office is in Kyiv, and Ukrainian IT specialists, they were part of the startup, and this is the thing that, like, what makes me optimistic about Ukrainian future. Of course, when as MP, I was traveling all around the country, so for me the symbol of modern time, it was minibus Sumy Warsaw, and probably that's not for tourists, but it's about people who go to work abroad, and it's actually pretty sad statistics that only 500,000 of Ukrainians move to Poland to work. But I still truly believe that Ukraine is a country of opportunities, because Ukraine has 3 optimistic news in the recent future, because European choice of Ukraine is obvious, and next time when we have elections, so we will not have a discussion like should Ukraine go to Europe or to Russia. This dilemma is closed. Ukraine made a pro-European choice, and it's also optimistic news. Second optimistic piece of news is that Ukrainian institutions are able to be viable. Nabu has been attacked for 2 years, but it's a success story. They exist. They are at the forefront, and the fact how it is attacked now is actually the best compliment to this organization. They hear a lot of criticism, but it's also unprecedented institution in Ukraine. And then independent testing in schools. So many of you entered universities in completely different realities how we were entering universities, and that's another example to be optimistic. And the third, that's Ukrainian creative class, that I'm sure that now you're on the level of the best world level. So I know that we need to finish. So what makes me optimistic is that Ukraine has plenty of opportunities. Ukraine becomes the China of Eastern Europe, and actually the ticket to enter European economy is pretty cheap, so we are very close. So if Ukraine creates the investment climate, that's our task, then Ukraine will be a country of startup. So the ambassador of Norway left, but Norwegian country comes to the market is the wind power, and solar energy companies entered earlier Ukraine. Okay, time. And my recipe is Ukrainian realities allow you to use social lifts. In Britain or the United States, you cannot build career, kind of career that we were able to build. So please join politics. Politics is a place which you can change. If there are more better people there, then it will be a better place. So please be active in political life. Optimism is going up. So just optimism is growing, yeah. Like we said, it was said that Ukraine can be the Singapore of Eastern Europe, but now China. But maybe we should stay just Ukraine. And I am the oldest, I am like old generation of Euro optimist because I'm not a young politician. I'm over 40, so I'm a grandmother of Euro optimist. I want to thank you once again that despite the terrible weather you came, you saw us, you heard us. But it will be even more pleasant when we communicate with you more. And I want to finish with just a few words as a nice story when a student came to a teacher and asked, how long should I wait for changes for the future? It's like, if you are going to wait, then it's too long. So we are not waiting, we are acting. There are only 25 of us in parliament. Regardless, despite being a minority, but we have a lot to be proud of. Second quote, if you have nothing, you have very important, valuable. There's a choice. We made our choice in 2014, and in 2015 when we united, we made our choice to build our Ukraine of our future, of our dream, Ukraine where we want to live, where we want to see where our generation is successful, but we want other generations to be successful too. So, despite having difficult times in the country, but society wants positive changes, and we understand that responsibility. We take responsibility for these positive changes, but we also want to rely on your support, so that you will support our optimism, Euro optimism. Thank you very much. And I want to ask you the round of applause to all the participants of Euro Optimist group, and all people who came to listen, and to give a round of applause to thank Galina and Volodymyr, who we never saw, but if you use translation, you heard them. Thank you very much. We ask to leave the room as quick as possible.